I would say the most common question I get on a very regular basis is, what do I eat in a day? And so there's been a lot of demand for me to make a video like this. I'm going to do my best to explain my reasoning behind what I eat, a simple framework of how I design my nutritional template, as well as a nutritional template for clients, and all the details around how your body really recognizes energy and is able to transform that energy into something that it can use, because that's the basis behind all of this. It is not calories in, calories out. It is not following a specific diet dogma, making it your whole personality. It is, how well can your body recognize the information that you're giving it, and how well can it transform that information into usable energy? So, before I talk about all this stuff, just a quick little housekeeping note. This is not medical advice or meant to be a substitution for working one-on-one with a practitioner who can really sit down and have a full conversation with you about your individual needs, your environment, all of these other things that are going to play into, again, this energy management system of your body, and understanding how well that works and how to optimize it. The second thing is, I do have a couple of programs that are going to give you a blueprint for putting this information into action for yourself. If you listen to this video and feel like, all right, I want to take this a step further and bring this into my life as a lifestyle, I've got the 21-day leptin reset program, which again gives you this blueprint of maximizing the energy management system of your body, supporting the mitochondria and your cell on this level, as well as the leptin master plan. If you are someone who really wants all of the scientific data, research, studies, videos, graphs, all of that in a format that is pretty extensive, that program is also available. I do recommend it more so for practitioners, but if you are someone who just loves science and understanding this information, that program is also an option for you. So those are the little housekeeping notes. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, and I will have timestamps down in the show notes for you as well, if you want to skip around and go to a place that feels a little more relevant for you. But I'm going to lay this out the best way I know how. And number one is understanding that the body doesn't necessarily see calories. The body doesn't necessarily see food this way. It sees it as information. And the energy currency of the body is electrons. We have mitochondria, millions, billions of them, some of us. And this is how our body makes energy in the form of ATP, as well as deuterium depleted water at step 4. And Dr. Gilbert Ling really theorized that the main way our bodies made and used energy was this whole water network and exclusion zone water, which Dr. Gerald Pollack has really done the most research on. But this is really the energy currency of the body, electrons, and having a cell that is negatively charged to have appropriate voltage and energy so that we can carry out these functions. So when we look at food, it is information. It is an electron. We can also get electrons from grounding. We can also get electrons from sunlight on the skin, from infrared light. All of these different things influence this intricate energy management system of the body. Things like blue light and non-native EMF, they drain this exclusion zone water from the body up to 15 to 20%, according to the research of Dr. Gerald Pollack in his lab. And so if you are in an environment where you have a lot of quote unquote energy stealers, things that are bringing down your mitochondria's ability to use and make energy, then your body is not going to process food in the same way as well. So I really hope I'm clear about this, that we have to support ourselves at the level of the cell. And this doesn't necessarily involve having a diet that has a specific name, as much as it does providing your body with information that it can use and understand. This is also why deuterium is so crucial, because deuterium, when it accumulates in the mitochondria, it impedes the ability of the body to make energy and water, ATP and deuterium depleted water. It blocks this process. It breaks the motors inside of the mitochondria. And so when you are eating a diet that's full of seed oils, a lot of processed food, uh, yeah, there's a lot of information out there about how this is not healthy for us and it's not good for us. And I think people kind of intuitively know it. But a major issue is deuterium and what this does to the mitochondria. So no, you can't just eat 1,000 calories of Pop Tarts and Doritos and expect your cells to operate and function efficiently when you're loading it up with this really confusing information and high levels of deuterium, as you would if you're eating some locally grown fruit and some bioavailable protein in the form of seafood, ruminant animals, eggs. It's going to be utilized differently inside of your body because it's information. So let's take the emotion out of these different diets and making it our whole personality, looking at it as a panacea because our body has these other inputs and ways of making energy through things like grounding and sunlight. And food is simply information. So, do you want to give your body good information or do you want to give your body bad information? So all these phrases like all foods fit and there are no bad foods. I don't think anything is morally good or bad. It's just what's good information for my body. What can my body recognize and utilize? And just to kind of jump ahead a little bit to me and personally, what I recommend is I've gotten my mitochondria healthy. I support myself on a cellular level through the things that I teach in my 21-day program and here for free on the podcast. I've gotten my body to a really good spot so that I can follow kind of a 90-10 rule. Some people say 80-20. I'm more of a 90-10 kind of gal, right? So 90% of the time, I'm following this nutritional template or program with food that I'll explain to you here in this video. I'm always trying to do all the circadian and mitochondrial support programs, again, that I teach in my 21-day, but that includes circadian rhythms, blocking blue light at night, sunlight exposure, grounding, a little bit of cold therapy, these things that support my body on the cellular level. I aim to do that like 100% of the time. I might get to 98, 99% because life happens and I'm not perfect. But that's just really what I aim for. And with food, it's more of like a 90% of the time. 10% of the time, I eat things that wouldn't necessarily be considered local, seasonal, or, this idea of perfection, right? So my body is resilient because of how I've worked on it and done all these practices to support energy management in my body. So what we have to look at when we look at nutrition is how energy efficient is your body? How well do your mitochondria make ATP and water? How is that working for you? And if you have a lot of excess swelling, a lot of inflammation, excess weight, miscommunication in the body of some sort, then that's a clue and a signal that this energy management system in the body is not being supported. Nutrition is about 1/3 of the equation. The other equation is how are you living on a 24-hour basis? What signals are you sending your body? So I'm trying to lay a decent groundwork and framework. Again, there's timestamps if you want to skip ahead, if you're like, this is not relevant to me. I do hope you'll understand this information though and take it into account when it comes to food. But that is really how it works. And when we look at the mitochondria in particular, as it relates to food, and this is more detailed in my Leptin Master Plan course if you want to study this on a deeper level, but we have UV light receptors on cytochrome 1 in the electron transport chain. So that is in the mitochondria. And that is where carbohydrates enter the electron transport chain. Fats enter at 2. We also have red light receptors on the mitochondria that allow our body to utilize glucose, have better glucose tolerance. So if you can eat a meal grounded outside, it's going to be processed better for your body, by your body, than if you were sitting in front of the television after sunset eating a meal. It's going to be metabolized completely differently by your body. So this is what's missing in a lot of the nutrition information out there is when are you eating? What are you eating? Where are you eating? What time of year is it? What time of day is it? Because all of these are going to factor into how well your body can recognize the information that you're giving it, and use it. This is crucial. Again, this is what I teach in my 21-day program of how to implement this for yourself. Okay. So hopefully that is making sense. Now let's really get into the nitty-gritty of how I've gotten to where I'm at. So if you're someone with leptin resistance, if you have a lot of swelling, a lot of inflammation, all these things in your body, you're going to have to be more strict with what it is that you eat, right? Because again, 90% of the time I follow this framework. The other 10% of the time, I I don't. And I don't need to really get further into that, but I don't gain weight from it. I don't experience ill effects from it. It is something my body is resilient and I can handle. But I'm not going to recommend that to the person who has this excess inflammation on their body. I'm going to say we need to really dial this in and get your body to the point where you are metabolically flexible and you can burn fat for fuel, and you can also burn glucose for fuel. So you're not really in an inefficient metabolic state. And that takes some time and it takes some consistency. Again, that framework is more in my 21-day program, but I experienced it from the lens of being carnivore for 2 years and not being able to burn glucose for fuel and having several systems in my body kind of down regulated because I had been in this more of a fasted, low carb, no carb state for a couple of years. Some people can do fine with that, but I find for myself and a lot of, it's more my female clients, but I do have male clients as well that experience this, that you get a one handful of benefits. For me, it was mental health, gut issues, skin issues. A lot of those kind of issues that I had dealt with lifelong were resolved. But then I started having the other issues with hormones, thyroid. Even my immune system was starting to get a little bit wonky because leptin signals the immune system. And so I was becoming leptin resistant while following this like low, no carb diet. That's not 98% of people. Okay. So I'm talking to a very small amount of people here who've been on this kind of way of eating for a while. But if that's you and you've been kind of doing this dietary protocol and you're seeing that it's no longer working for you, then this conversation is for you. But for the other 98% of people, most people are overfed. They are not able to burn fat for fuel. And this is a big issue, right? So I sometimes forget that there's a very small amount of people who are kind of in this keto, carnivore, low carb world. And most people are just, unable to burn fat for fuel, period. So I had to go through getting my body able to burn both glucose as well as fat for fuel. This was methodical. This was me starting to, and I did this in the summertime, look at what is local, seasonal, available, and add in some of those foods, the simple sugar fruits. I started with more leafy green produce, stuff like that, cooking it, eating it in the middle of the day, eating it outside, and getting my body more tolerant to being able to recognize and utilize these foods for energy, because I had not been using them for energy for a couple of years. Different digestive functions of mine were downregulated because of this. So it is not just as simple as going and carb cycling, right? It's kind of getting your body better able to utilize these foods. Again, 98% of people are not going to fit in this category, and they're just overfed and overdoing it with all the processed foods, all the carbohydrates, all the stuff that's out of season. That is just a confusing signal to the body, period. So let's just continue to have that context. But for me, when I began to do this entire lifestyle, so it was circadian signaling, light, sunlight on the skin, grounding, blocking blue light at night. That was about 2/3 of the equation, but the 1/3 of the equation, which is the food, which is why I really just, don't talk about what I eat in a day, because it's really just 1/3 of the equation. But adding in those local seasonal carbohydrates in a methodical way. I do outline this in my metabolic flexibility webinar, which you get as a part of the 21-day leptin reset. It's a 90-minute webinar talking about this, how to become fat adapted, how to fast, all of those different things. But I'll put a separate link for that in the show notes as well, if it's something you just want to get as a one-off. But that was what I did to lose 30 pounds. And I really wasn't trying to lose the 30 pounds. I was just trying to get my hormones regulated and feel better. and quit counting my steps and counting my calories and counting all the time. That's what I did, was a lifestyle, and then adding in what was local and seasonal to me, eating it outdoors, and kind of following the tenets in that metabolic flexibility webinar. So I had to do that for a while to get my body back to metabolic health, to lose the weight. And then again, after I had my son, I didn't follow a carnivore diet during pregnancy. I did eat really, protein heavy, meat heavy, animal foods heavy, but I had seasonal carbs. I had homemade ice cream. I gained weight and I didn't care because I knew I could reverse it, and I wasn't eating crap food. I was eating a lot of nourishing foods, probably more than I should have been, but hey, what are you going to do? So after I had my son, I just said, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go back to the basics that I know. And I did. And I've been able to, again, lose all of the weight and then some. So I'm actually leaner now than I was before pregnancy. And it is a consistency of doing these circadian and quantum principles, as well as the nutrition. So here we are, 16 minutes in. Let me talk about my nutritional framework that I use for myself and also with clients. So protein is the basis that I build everything around. I'm very, people are like, oh, you're hyper carnivore or carnivore this. I don't unsubscribe. I do not give my particular way of eating a name. If you wanted to, you could call it hyper carnivore. I don't know, don't care. I just do what works for me, and what I see work for other people. But I put the basis of my meals around bioavailable protein, which is ruminant animals, eggs, wild seafood, and a little bit of poultry every now and then. I don't do a ton of it, but every now and then I do enjoy having some poultry. Try to do sustainably raised, farmed, all that stuff. So that is the basis. And then depending on the time of year and time of day, I will add in local seasonal produce. And that is, again, 90%. The other 10%, I just eat what I want, but it's 10%. So my body handles it. And I've worked hard to get to this place where my body can be resilient. So it's not something I've done the whole time. So let's just start with breakfast. What I typically eat for breakfast is going to be some sort of a breakfast sausage. Now, when I look at food, and this is how I talk in my 21-day program, I'm going to say gold standard, great, good, not so good. So gold standard for breakfast for me is going to be a locally made sausage, that doesn't have any additives. I know all the ingredients. I know how the animal was treated and raised. That will be my gold standard breakfast. I can't always get to that. So sometimes I will have the Applegate Farms chicken sausage. Again, not ideal, but it's good in a pinch if I'm busy, I've got kids. I also make a breakfast casserole. I haven't made it in a really long time, actually. I haven't been wanting eggs in a really long time. I don't know why that is, but I haven't been eating a ton of eggs recently. But every now and then I'll have that breakfast casserole, something that I can grab and go that's easy. I'm always sitting outside for that. And I do have right now, I'm drinking a little bit of coffee. So you can, I believe, have a little bit of coffee and still be healthy. I may cycle off of it. I've gone periods of a couple years without it. But I don't want that to be a deterrent for anybody who's looking to get healthy and lose weight. Oh, I got to give up my coffee, because it can be hard for people. And that's something you can do down the road once you get all this other signaling and all these other things kind of down pat. So breakfast, again, simple protein. The way I calculate protein, you may need more, you may need a little bit less. Factors that are going to influence how much protein you need. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding or elderly, you're going to need more. If you've got a lot of muscle and you're physically active, you're going to need more. But the place where I start people to say, let's try this and see how you feel, is to take your desired body weight in kilograms and multiply that by 1.5. And that is where you divide that up over about 3 meals. Okay. Now, I don't eat 3 meals every single day. I have maybe 1 or 2 days a week where I fast, where I skip dinner. I never skip breakfast. Breakfast is always a non-negotiable, but a couple days a week, I might just get to the point where I'm a little bit hungry, but not starving, and I'm not hangry. So there's a difference between hunger and hanger. And the goal of the leptin reset and the things that I teach is to get you so that you don't get hangry, which is where we're having blood sugar dysregulation and you feel angry because you're hungry. I want you to maybe be a little bit hungry, but you're okay, right? You have maybe a little bit of mineral water, go for a walk, take a nice warm bath, go to bed. You're fine. It doesn't disrupt your sleep. You just go through, right? You may even sleep better the nights that you have the dinner skipping. I don't do this on any sort of a schedule. I don't sit down on Sunday and say, okay, on Tuesday and on Friday, I'm going to skip dinner this week. I get to Tuesday maybe and say, I'm not hangry. I'm a little hungry, but I think I can go without dinner tonight and I don't have the dinner. I get busy with my kids and busy doing things and I move on with my life and fast that night. If it is towards the end of my cycle, more in the luteal phase, that might not happen that week. If I have a lot of high stress in my life, if there's a lot going on with my kids, the fasting may not happen. I do more of that sort of dinner skipping in the winter than I do the summer because there's less light available. And I have a rule that I don't eat after sunset. Now I'm in the 33rd latitude. So that's easy for me to do. If you're someone where the sun's going to set at 3 p.m., that's a little bit more difficult. It's going to take a lot more work for you to be fat adapted. And I might suggest that you, instead of sticking to that hard and fast rule, just make sure that you space your dinner and bedtime at least 3 to 4 hours apart. And that's more so in the winter of an issue. But for me, the sun's setting at 5:30 here in the winter, so it's a lot easier for me to skip the dinner and or just eat earlier dinner in the wintertime and eat 2 meals a day. Um, but summertime is more of a 3 meals a day, and I'll intuitively fast maybe 1-2 days a week, depending again on stress levels and time of the month. And there's no protocol for this. This is intuition. This is how do I feel? And I know this sounds like Greek to a lot of people. Again, this is another thing I aim to be as a goal for people going through my 21-day program is that you are in touch, you are in tune with light dark cycles, seasons, and you can trust more of your gut feeling and your intuition when it comes to what your body needs. Because we outsource our health way too often, way too often. That's why I hesitate to make videos like this, because I don't want you to outsource your intuition to me. I want to help you reconnect to your intuition, especially when it comes to nutrition. So I know I'm like, I hope you're utilizing the timestamps if you need to get through this video just to get the information. Please, I hope you are. So that is breakfast, and that is kind of how I approach fasting. Lunch is typically going to be some sort of protein. I do in the summertime probably more seafood than I do in the winter. I just crave it more in the wintertime. I'm going to be more likely to take a spoonful of salmon roe, which I get mine from a place called Caviar Roost. They also sell it at my local Whole Foods. There's Asian markets where you can get salmon roe. You can get it at another place online called Vital Choice. But wintertime, I'm going to just really utilize the salmon roe more often as my seafood. In the summertime, like now, I'm loving scallops. I'm loving oysters. I'm loving shrimp. I'm loving wild caught salmon. I don't really like the tinned fish. I don't really like them at all. It's just a personal preference. But if I was going to use those, I'd use the Wild Planet that are in water, not in the oil. But that is basis for lunch and dinner proteins are going to be either a seafood, ruminant animal. And again, rarely I'll have a little craving for chicken. I'll eat a little chicken if I really want it. But it's not a main thing that I eat. It's a lot of seafood right now. And lamb is something that we cook quite a bit. My son, my 21-month-old will be 21 months next week, loves lamb, and he loves salmon roe too. Like I have to hide the jar from him. He loves it. And he loves seafood. He loves the salmon. If you're worried about seafood and you're worried about the mercury, I really encourage you to look at the work of Dr. Michael Crawford and his explanation and information around seafood mercury toxicity and a lot of the information that we have been taught in the mainstream. And do your own research. Do your own research with everything I say, please. Don't take it as word. I don't want to be anybody's guru. I just want to help you be able to, again, reconnect to your intuition and your ability to research and your ability to translate information as it is relevant to you. Okay. So again, lunch, some sort of protein. I follow in the protein guidelines. Unless it's a fasting day, then I might miss some of that protein, but I will usually make up for it the next day. Some sort of produce depending on the time of year. So for instance, today I have sauteed onions, peppers with scallops that I cooked in a tomato sauce, slow cooked over the stove. I have kelp noodles, and I may do a little bit of sauteed spinach to throw in there. And that'll be my lunch. I might have a few strawberries at the end of the meal, maybe, maybe not. We've got strawberries available right now. We also have watermelon, peaches. We have all kinds of fruit and produce right now. So if I'm going to have a piece of fruit, it will be at the end of my meal. And it's usually at lunch, sometimes at dinner. I don't have a hard and fast rule about that necessarily in the summer, but it will be at the end of the meal. And usually I'm outside eating, and I try to eat everything outside if I can, if weather permits and time permits and children permit. That's what I aim to do. Because again, I know the impact that light has on my mitochondria, on glucose tolerance, and I like to maximize that as much as possible. So lunch and dinner are pretty similar. Some sort of a protein, whatever is, I do my best to stay with produce that is more appropriate for that time of year. So you're not going to find me eating bananas, tropical fruit, things like that in the middle of winter. If I'm living here at the 33rd latitude, maybe if I was living in Costa Rica, that might be more appropriate. If I was metabolically healthy also. So metabolic health and leptin sensitivity also come into play, because if someone is extremely leptin resistant, the stored energy on their body and their brain are not having a conversation. And so it's going to be more difficult for the mitochondria to take in that information, right? So that's why we optimize this as an entire lifestyle and meet the person where they are. Typically, if I have someone, so just talking about nutrition and food, my favorite is when I get somebody who's eating a standard American diet that comes to me, because I can make it very simple and say, let's get rid of the grains. Let's get rid of all processed foods, grains, and move you more towards just protein as your basis, taking it up or down as needed. We'll kind of see how you feel, how well you can digest and absorb and utilize it. And then, just stick with the produce for the carbohydrates. And I don't even have them count, weigh, and measure anything, and they'll just rapidly start losing weight. And we're doing all these other circadian practices and giving the cells in the body correct information, continuing to reinforce that signaling, and they have tremendous results. What's a little bit harder is if someone's kind of already eating this like super clean diet, that's where we have to really maximize on those circadian quantum inputs, as well as push in some of the things I teach my metabolic flexibility webinar about getting you to be more fat adapted so you can do a little bit of fasting. Now, if I tell someone to fast, I'm always going to have them skip dinner. I'm not going to have them skip breakfast, because for me, I never skip breakfast. It's something that I have daily. And again, it's usually some sort of a sausage, either from a local farm, or I'll do the not gold standard Applegate Farms chicken sausage. Y'all can just berate me in the comments. I know it's going to come, but it's fine. I'm sharing. And that is a staple every day outside. Sunrise is signaling, very strong signaling. Same with the blocking blue light after sunset. Very essential for your body to be able to have gut healing, repair, the lining to replace, and building adequate exclusion zone water, and getting your cell to the healthiest place where it can utilize energy, where it can utilize food the way it is supposed to, instead of being confused and creating inflammation and having energy leaking all over the place, which is what happens with a lot of people. So, am I keto? Am I carnivore? Am I paleo? I don't have a name or a label for the way that I eat. I guess if I had to label it, I would say it's more paleo. I really don't do nuts and seeds. I just don't feel my best with them. Again, it's an intuition thing. I really don't do yogurts. If I'm going to have dairy, it'll be a little bit of raw cheese or a little bit of raw cream. If I'm having coffee, I don't do yogurts because typically they make me feel more hungry after I eat them. Like, why did I even bother eating that? Because now I feel more hungry because there's some sort of an insulin response happening. And I see that with a lot of people. So if you're somebody that is having appetite issues and you're including a lot of dairy, that might be something you want to temporarily eliminate. And here's the last and final thing I want to talk about in this nutrition conversation. The goal is not to be keto or carnivore or paleo or whatever dietary name. The goal is to have a way of eating that is sustainable for you, that works for you, that helps you achieve your goals for you. And everyone's going to need to tweak things a little bit differently to maximize this for them. And if you have a lot of pre-existing health issues, you're going to have to be more strict for a while. That is plain and simple. For me to get to where I'm at, I did have to be strict for a while. But now I am in a really good place. My body is really resilient, and I don't have to be 100% all the time. So a lot of people will come to my program and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't eat this way forever, Sarah." And I'm telling you, you don't necessarily have to. But we have to, for a time, get your body to maximize the appropriate signals so that you are supporting the energy management system of your body. Again, we're not looking at calories in, calories out. You're not tracking everything you're doing and your steps and all this stuff and being like psychotic about it and driving yourself up the wall. We are giving your body, we're reprogramming your body to make and utilize energy the best. And that's the goal. And that's what we're looking for. So this was way longer than I had originally planned for it. But I hope it gives you a framework and information of how I eat on a regular basis, how this is going to shift based on the time of year, the season, how I fast, if I choose to fast, and hopefully you can extract some of that information out and apply it to yourself. Again, if you want more information or more help, I've got the programs I mentioned. I'll put those in the show notes, and I will see you again on the next episode.